and you can see all the major pieces, and you can zoom all the way down to the smallest detail, having a comprehensive view of the entirety of the wreck site.
For over a century, the Titanic has been a frozen tomb at the bottom of the Atlantic. Nothing could survive there. Nothing should move. But in 2025, a deep-sea drone captured footage that left scientists speechless. Something inside the wreck was still active, still pulsing, after 113 years. What they discovered behind a sealed door changes everything we thought we knew about this tragedy. The signal that shouldn't exist. The expedition had begun weeks earlier aboard the research vessel Meridian Star, a state-of-the-art ship chartered by an international team of oceanographers and deep-sea engineers. Their mission was straightforward: deploy the most advanced underwater drone ever built to create a complete three-dimensional scan of the Titanic before the wreck collapses entirely. Scientists have known for years that the ship is deteriorating rapidly. Entire sections have already crumbled. Within decades, experts believe there will be nothing left but a rust stain on the ocean floor. This was supposed to be a race against time to preserve history. The drone they used was called Triton 7, a titanium-hulled machine equipped with artificial intelligence capable of navigating debris fields without human guidance. Its sensors could detect vibrations smaller than a whisper. Its cameras could capture details invisible to the human eye. For the first 2 days, everything went as planned. Triton 7 descended into the abyss and began mapping the wreck with unprecedented clarity. Rusted corridors, collapsed stairwells, the ghostly remains of chandeliers still hanging in what was once the grandest ballroom on any ship. Then, on the third dive, something changed. The drone's vibration sensors picked up an anomaly, a low-frequency pulse emanating from deep within the stern section. At first, the control room dismissed it as a glitch. Equipment at that depth often produces strange readings. But the pulse didn't stop. It continued, steady and rhythmic, for hours. When the audio feed was amplified and played through the speakers, the entire crew fell silent. It sounded like a heartbeat. No one could explain what they were hearing. The Titanic had been dead for 113 years. Nothing mechanical could possibly still function at those temperatures and pressures. And yet, something down there was moving. The team faced a choice: pull back and analyze the data, or send the drone deeper to find the source. They chose to go deeper, and what they found would haunt them forever. The Forbidden Corridor. The decision was made. Triton 7 would follow the signal. In the control room aboard the Meridian Star, every screen displayed the drone's live feed. The team watched in tense silence as the machine descended deeper into the wreck, its floodlights cutting through clouds of sediment and rust particles that swirled like underwater snow. The stern section of the Titanic is the most dangerous part of the wreck. When the ship broke apart during its final plunge, this section spiraled downward and slammed into the seafloor with catastrophic force. Decks pancaked on top of each other. Walls collapsed inward. What remains is a twisted labyrinth of crushed metal that has never been fully explored. Previous expeditions had avoided this area. The risk of losing equipment was too high. But the signal was coming from somewhere inside that maze, and the team was determined to find its source. Triton 7's artificial intelligence plotted a path through the debris, making micro-adjustments to avoid jagged steel and dangling cables. The drone moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if it sensed the danger surrounding it. For nearly an hour, the feed showed nothing but destruction. Bent railings, shattered portholes, unrecognizable fragments of what had once been one of the most luxurious vessels ever built. Then the sonar detected something unexpected. Ahead of the drone, hidden behind a wall of collapsed beams, was a structure that appeared intact. Not just intact, sealed. The readings indicated a door, still closed, still holding after more than a century underwater. The control room erupted with whispered speculation. How was that possible? The pressure at that depth is immense. Any air pocket would have been crushed within hours of the sinking. Yet the sensors showed a distinct boundary, a space where the water had not penetrated. The mission commander gave the order to proceed. Triton 7 maneuvered through a narrow gap in the debris and emerged into a corridor that looked almost preserved. The walls were coated in thick orange rust, but their shape was still recognizable. This had once been part of the officers' quarters, a restricted section where only senior crew members were allowed. At the end of the corridor stood the door. It was made of heavy brass, now blackened by decades of chemical reaction with the seawater. But unlike everything else in the wreck, it was still standing, still closed. A small window near the top was completely opaque, covered in a film of mineral deposits that the drone's lights could not penetrate. The vibration sensors spiked. The rhythmic pulse was stronger here. Whatever was generating that signal was behind this door. One of the engineers leaned toward his microphone and whispered to his colleague, "No one has ever been in there. Not Ballard, Cameron, and no one." The drone extended its mechanical arm and reached for the handle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan that echoed through the audio feed, the door began to move. What waited on the other side had been hidden for 113 years, and it was about to change everything. The figure in the chair. The door swung inward with agonizing slowness, releasing a cloud of particles that had been trapped for over a century. Triton 7's cameras adjusted automatically, filtering through the haze as its floodlights illuminated what lay beyond. The control room went completely silent. There, in the center of a small cabin, sat a human skeleton. It was positioned upright in a wooden chair, facing the door as if waiting for someone to enter. The bones were remarkably intact, held together by remnants of clothing that had somehow resisted complete decay. A dark coat still draped over the shoulders. Fragments of a white shirt clung to the ribcage. One boot remained on the left foot, resting against the floor. But it was the position that disturbed the crew most. The skeleton wasn't slumped or collapsed like the other remains found throughout the wreck. It was sitting deliberately, almost formally, with both hands resting on the armrests of the chair. And in the right hand, clutched between bony fingers, was a gold object. The drone moved closer, its cameras zooming in on the item. At first glance, it appeared to be a pocket watch. The casing was ornate, decorated with engravings that were still visible despite a thin layer of mineral buildup. A small chain dangled from the top, disappearing into what remained of the figure's coat pocket. Then, someone in the control room noticed something impossible. The watch was moving. Not the whole object, just the mechanism inside. Through the glass face, the crew could see a small wheel oscillating back and forth in a precise, rhythmic motion. It was the same rhythm they had been tracking for days, the same pulse that had led them here. The watch was still ticking. Pandemonium erupted on the ship. Engineers shouted over each other, demanding explanations. Scientists scrambled to verify the footage, convinced it had to be a visual glitch or some trick of the light. But every diagnostic came back the same. The movement was real. The signal was emanating directly from the object in the skeleton's hand. One researcher stumbled backward from his console, his face drained of color. "That's mechanically impossible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's no power source, no battery. Nothing can run for 100 years without energy." but the evidence was undeniable. Frame-by-frame analysis confirmed that the balance wheel inside the watch was completing a full oscillation every 3 seconds, perfectly synchronized with the pulse they had detected from the surface. The temperature readings inside the chamber added another layer of mystery. The sealed room was slightly warmer than the surrounding water, just a fraction of a degree, but enough to suggest that something was generating heat. Faint condensation appeared on the walls in rhythmic patterns, forming and dissipating in sync with the ticking. The mission commander ordered the drone to hold position. No one wanted to get closer. No one wanted to disturb whatever strange equilibrium had kept this mechanism running for more than a century. Questions filled the room. Who was this person? Why had they sealed themselves inside? And how was that watch still functioning in conditions that should have destroyed it within days of the sinking? The answers, they would soon discover, had been deliberately hidden for decades. And the man who had found them first had taken the secret to his grave. What Ballard never told us. To understand what the 2025 expedition had uncovered, we need to go back 40 years to a discovery that changed history. In September 1985, oceanographer Robert Ballard became the first person to locate the wreckage of the Titanic. After decades of failed attempts by treasure hunters and researchers, Ballard and his team found the ship resting on the ocean floor, split in two, exactly where survivors had reported watching it disappear beneath the waves. The discovery made international headlines. Ballard became a legend. But what the world didn't know was that finding the Titanic had never been his primary mission. Decades later, declassified Navy documents revealed a stunning truth. Ballard's expedition had been funded by the United States military, and the real objective was to secretly investigate 2 nuclear submarines that had sunk during the Cold War. The USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion both lay on the Atlantic Sea floor, and the Navy wanted to know if their nuclear reactors were leaking radiation. The Titanic search was a cover story, a way to explain why an American research vessel was spending weeks scanning the deep Atlantic without raising suspicion from Soviet intelligence. Ballard was given a deal. Complete the submarine inspections first, and whatever time remained could be used to search for the Titanic. He had just 12 days. Against all odds, he found the ship. But the declassified files contained something else, something that had been redacted from every public report. During the 1985 expedition, Ballard's sonar equipment recorded an anomaly near the stern section of the wreck. The official logs described it as an unresolved signal return and marked it for further investigation. That investigation never happened. The files showed that naval officers present on the expedition ordered all data related to the anomaly to be classified. When the 2025 team compared their own readings to those 40-year-old records, the match was undeniable. The coordinates were nearly identical. The frequency patterns were the same. Whatever Ballard's equipment had detected in 1985 was the same phenomenon their drone had just rediscovered. Former members of Ballard's original crew were contacted. Most refused to speak. But 2 technicians, now in their 70s, agreed to share what they remembered under condition of anonymity. Both described a tense atmosphere during the final days of the expedition. They recalled Ballard having heated arguments with Navy representatives aboard the ship. One technician remembered seeing photographs being confiscated and placed in sealed containers. The other recalled Ballard returning from a private briefing looking shaken, refusing to discuss what he had seen. Years later, in a rare interview, Ballard made a cryptic statement that had puzzled historians ever since. He said, "When I found the Titanic, I realized some doors are better left closed. Not everything down there is meant to be disturbed." At the time, Most assumed he was speaking about the human remains scattered throughout the wreck, a call for dignity and respect. But in light of the 2025 discovery, those words took on a different meaning. Ballard had found the sealed chamber. He had detected the same impossible signal. And for reasons that may have involved national security, scientific disbelief, or something far more disturbing, he had chosen to say nothing. The question now was simple. What had he seen that frightened him into silence? The science of the impossible. Back aboard the Meridian Star, the crew worked through the night. Sleep was impossible. Every scientist, engineer, and technician was consumed by the same question. How could a mechanical device still function after 113 years at the bottom of the ocean? The conditions at that depth are brutal beyond imagination. The water temperature hovers just above freezing. The pressure exceeds 6,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush a submarine like an aluminum can. Salt water corrodes metal within months. Organic material disintegrates. Nothing survives. And yet, the footage was undeniable. The balance wheel inside that watch was moving with precision that defied every known law of physics and chemistry. The team began proposing theories. The first explanation focused on the sealed chamber itself. Somehow, the room had remained airtight since the sinking. If true, the environment inside would be radically different from the rest of the wreck. Without saltwater exposure, corrosion would slow dramatically. Without pressure equalization, delicate mechanisms might survive intact. But even this couldn't explain ongoing movement. A sealed chamber might preserve an object, but it couldn't power one. For the watch to still be ticking, it needed energy, and there was no apparent source. The second theory involved thermal dynamics. The temperature inside the chamber was slightly higher than the surrounding water. Some scientists suggested this differential could create microcurrents of air, generating just enough force to move extremely light components. If the balance wheel was delicate enough, these tiny currents might keep it oscillating indefinitely. Others were skeptical. The motion was too consistent, too rhythmic to be caused by random air movement. It followed a precise pattern that repeated every 3 seconds without variation. Natural phenomena don't behave that way. A third hypothesis came from the biologists on board. They pointed to a bacteria called Halomonas titanicae, a microorganism discovered living on the Titanic's hull. These bacteria consume iron and create structures called rusticles, the icicle-like formations that now cover much of the wreck. As they feed and grow, they expand and contract in cycles. Could colonies of this bacteria have infiltrated the watch mechanism?
It's a natural process. These are natural types of bacteria.
Could their biological rhythm be causing the movement that appeared mechanical? It was a creative theory, but the timing didn't match. Bacterial growth cycles occur over days or weeks, not seconds. Whatever was moving inside that watch was operating on a completely different scale. The engineering team offered the most disturbing possibility. They analyzed the electromagnetic readings captured by the drone and found something unexpected. The object was emitting a faint but measurable signal, not just vibrations, but actual electromagnetic pulses broadcasting outward from the device. This changed everything. A simple pocket watch doesn't emit electromagnetic radiation. Gears and springs and balance wheels are passive components. They don't generate signals. For the object to be transmitting, it would need to contain something more: circuitry, a power cell, or technology that officially didn't exist in 1912. The lead engineer pulled up the enhanced imaging scans and zoomed in on the watch casing. What he showed the team sent a chill through the room. Beneath the decorative exterior, barely visible through layers of mineral deposits, were thin lines running in geometric patterns. They weren't cracks or corrosion damage. They were too precise, too symmetrical. They looked like wires. The object in that skeleton's hand wasn't just a timepiece. It was something far more complex. Something that had been hidden aboard the Titanic, carried in secret, and somehow still functioning more than a century after the ship went down. The team realized they weren't just investigating an anomaly. They were uncovering a conspiracy. The device that shouldn't exist. The discovery sent the research team down a rabbit hole of historical investigation that would consume them for days. If the object in the skeleton's hand contained wiring and circuitry, it wasn't a pocket watch. It was something else entirely. Something that shouldn't have existed in 1912. The team needed to understand what they were looking at and who could have possibly built it. They started with the Titanic's cargo manifests. The ship had been carrying an extraordinary collection of valuables on its maiden voyage. Wealthy passengers brought jewelry, fine art, and personal treasures worth fortunes. The cargo holds contained everything from automobiles to rare wines to cases of ostrich feathers destined for fashion houses. But nowhere in the official records was there any mention of experimental equipment, scientific instruments, or prototype technology. If this device had been aboard, it wasn't listed. Someone had smuggled it onto the ship. The historians on the team began researching the state of technology in 1912. What they found was surprising. The early 20th century was a period of explosive innovation. Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with wireless energy transmission. Guglielmo Marconi had recently demonstrated long-range radio communication. Engineers across Europe and America were racing to develop new ways to send signals across vast distances. Much of this research was conducted in secret. Governments and private investors understood the military potential of wireless communication. Whoever controlled the airwaves would have an enormous strategic advantage. Patents were filed under false names. Laboratories operated without public knowledge. Prototypes disappeared into classified archives. Could someone have been using the Titanic to transport an experimental device? The ship's maiden voyage would have been the perfect cover. Thousands of passengers, mountains of luggage, minimal inspection. A piece of technology hidden inside an ordinary-looking watch case could have crossed the Atlantic without anyone noticing. The team dug deeper into passenger records, searching for anyone with connections to electrical engineering or experimental physics. One name kept appearing in their research. Among the Titanic's first-class passengers was a man named Francis Brown, a Jesuit priest and amateur photographer who had documented the voyage before disembarking at Queenstown. His photographs remain some of the only images taken aboard the ship before the disaster. But Brown wasn't the only person of interest. The passenger list included several wealthy industrialists with known investments in telegraph and wireless technology. At least two had documented connections to laboratories conducting classified research for European governments. One passenger in particular drew the team's attention. His name appeared in the manifest, but his occupation was listed only as gentleman. No profession, no company affiliation, no reason for traveling to America. His cabin was located in the stern section near the officers' quarters, exactly where the sealed chamber had been found. The researchers cross-referenced his name with historical archives and discovered something chilling. 6 months before the Titanic sailed, this man had been mentioned in a letter between two scientists discussing a prototype resonance transmitter, a device theoretically capable of sending signals through water using low-frequency vibrations. The letter described the device as unstable and potentially dangerous. It warned that the oscillations could interfere with nearby instruments and might even affect the structural integrity of metal objects if the frequency was wrong. The scientists on the Meridian star exchanged uneasy glances. If that device had been activated during the voyage, intentionally or by accident, could it have affected the ship's navigation equipment? Could it have interfered with the telegraph system that failed to relay ice warnings? Could this hidden technology have played a role in the Titanic's doom? The ship that never stopped. The more the team studied the device, the more alarmed they became. The electromagnetic signal had been transmitting for over a century without interruption. Whatever power source kept it alive showed no signs of depleting. But what terrified the engineers most was its behavior. During a final drone survey, a technician noticed something chilling. When Triton 7's sonar pinged the chamber, the device's signal shifted. The frequency changed by a fraction of a hertz. The rhythm stuttered before resuming its steady pulse. It was reacting. The ship's physicist ran calculations through the night. His conclusions were grim. If the device was a resonance transmitter operating in delicate equilibrium, any disruption could trigger a malfunction. The sealed chamber contained trapped gases, hydrogen or methane, from decades of decomposition. If the device destabilized and generated heat, it could ignite everything. The skeleton, the device, the last evidence of whatever secret had been buried, all lost forever. The mission commander made the call. Triton 7 would withdraw. The chamber would remain sealed. But as the drone ascended, its cameras captured one final image. The skeletal hand holding the device had moved. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but the footage confirmed it. The fingers had shifted, as if tightening their grip on the object they had protected for over a century. In the weeks that followed, experts analyzed the footage. Debates raged. Government agencies requested access. Several were quietly denied. Robert Ballard, when shown the discovery, simply said, "I told them some doors should stay closed." Thanks for watching. If this gave you chills, hit like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.